worth it.
Hello. Hi. Hello. I can't tell you.
Hey, Paru.
Hello. Hi, Mala auntie. Hi, Sanya.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Happy Guru Purnima.
Happy Guru Purnima. Great. I'm so sorry for this. Someone just informed me they didn't have GeoMeet.
I was actually excited to try it.
Even me. I was like, I want to try.
But I got a very good feedback yesterday. Huh?
Yeah?
I was told it's very good clarity and all that. So I think people who are really against Zoom being a Chinese app, I think they'll all.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
I was trying
Good.
say namaste.
They need that.
Yeah, we do. Something local.
Yep.
Okay. So Ruchi, are you here? If you're here, just to know that you're here. No, you're not. Just give me a moment. Hello everyone. Hi Kadu.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Lovely.
Hi, Paru. I'm just gonna put my video on in 5 minutes. I just need to get my space.
No
set up.
worries. If those who feel uncomfortable with your video on, y'all can put it off as well. Hi Shreya. Mom, don't cough, please.
My friend Manju joined also.
Yeah. She messaged Malu and then I was wondering.
Yeah, she's here.
Hello.
Hi.
I get to see you through the Zoom thing.
Yeah, but my
Love
hair's
you.
a mess.
Totally okay.
Same here.
I love you just the way you are. It doesn't matter.
Thank you.
She's one floor below me, Paru.
Oh.
And she don't even know me. I love her. She's the knock 3 times. No, Manju, you have to knock on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Knock 3 times on
Yes.
the ceiling if you want me something, twice on the wall. Okay.
Yeah.
We haven't done any of
Okay,
that.
nowhere. Anyway, I'm putting my video off and my volume. So
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
whenever she's ready to start.
Okay, I
yeah.
think we've got everybody. We've got Suruchi here for whom we made this shift. So I'm happy that she's here. And everyone else is in here. So we can start.
Hi.
Hi, Manoni.
Hi.
Okay. So I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you all for this overwhelming response. It's the first time I'm ever teaching or talking about the sutras, and it's so nice and heartwarming to have so many of y'all interested in this subject. So before we actually dive into it, just a few things. I hope all of y'all have got the PDF that I sent on the group. We're not actually going through that. I will be putting it up on screen share, whichever parts I'll be going through. I'm just going to make this like an informal discussion. Let's see how time permits and how much I can dive into the subject. I ideally want to cover the first 3 sutras, which are all about just what is yoga, what is the goal of yoga, and how do you achieve it. So that's essentially what I'll be trying to cover in today's session. I'm also going to give in some background knowledge for those who are not practitioners of yoga or haven't, who don't even do any form of, I wouldn't say just asana practice, but any kind of meditation or anything. This will just probably give you an understanding of what is this subject about that we're going to dive into. So I request all of y'all to put yourselves on mute. At the end of the session, I will be keeping some time for an informal discussion, Q&A. So at that time, y'all can unmute yourself. Also, in the beginning of the session, before I dive in, I will be asking y'all what yoga means to y'all. So that time again, y'all can unmute it. But for right now, we're going to start by a short prayer to Sage Patanjali.
तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीना पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीना पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीना पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीना पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि योगेन चित्तस्य
So that's just to begin, and that was a short invocation or chant prayer to Sage Patanjali, and he's known to have provided not just the sutras but also Ayurveda, also grammar. So he's providing us the tools to clean our chitta, our heart, mind, our speech, and impurities of the body. So that was a short prayer to him. And I'm gonna start by actually asking y'all probably what does yoga mean to you? And this doesn't have to be a definition. There is no right or wrong answer. Please, everyone's correct based on their experience of what yoga means to them. So at this point, y'all can unmute yourself and let me know what does yoga mean to you. Anybody, just
To me, yoga to me, this is Mala here.
yeah.
Yoga to me means in entirety. How do you say that? Like in the entire being.
Okay, in the entire.
Yeah, and for like time immemorial.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, I'll say.
Yeah, sure.
For me, yoga helps me connect to myself, and like no matter whatever is going on in my mind, whatever mood I am in, when I get on my mat, I just feel connected to myself, and that's why I like practicing it.
That's really interesting. That's sort of my definition of yoga as well. Anyone else? Kadu, Khyati, anyone? Sure. Shruti?
I'm Shruti, and to me, yoga is the bridge between where I am and where I want to go.
Okay, interesting. One last one.
think
Khyati, yeah.
Yeah, for me it's similar to what Shruti says, and I think it's the bridge between my mind and body. So I think, yeah, I don't know how else to put it.
Really interesting. Yeah. So we're all looking this as a tool maybe to connect. We all have kind of accepted that we have multiple bodies, because someone's saying mind and body. Mala said in entirety and wholeness. So Mala auntie, sorry. So yeah, we've got this feeling of we are in parts and then coming together, like there's a joining. And I feel yog by itself comes from the Sanskrit root yajur, which means to join, to come. So it's the coming together, it's the assimilation. So that's sort of an organic expression of what we've all just said right now through our experience. And it's interesting because that's what I think that for me also yoga has sometimes I didn't even know I'm practicing yoga, but it's always taken on so many different forms. So I want to highlight this because I feel so many times people think that yoga is just asana, and it's nice to know that a lot of the people out here are not defining their definition of yoga to just a practice. It's more than that. It's more than you coming on the mat and doing a asana practice. It can be anything. It can be meditation. It can be cooking. It can be kirtan. So it keeps evolving. And this entire reason why I'm doing this is because I want you to make yoga an invitation to incorporate into your life. Make this as an invitation. Take this as an invitation to incorporate yoga into your life and let it be that expression of celebrating life. So yeah, I want to first of all welcome you all to this discussion. I want to keep it informal, except today might be a little structure driven, but in the classes to go I want it to be an informal discussion. So feel free to raise any questions or share your own readings. I have no authoritative role, and I consider myself always a student first of yoga, and then maybe a teacher in whatever sense that may be. And I think the aim of these sessions is just to ignite your curiosity. I may not have the answer to your questions. Please note that. I shall try. You can direct your questions to me. I shall try. But I think what's more important is that if you're left with those questions and you take it into whatever your practice of yoga means to you, it will reveal itself to you in due time. And I'm saying that out of my experience. There have been moments where I'm lost, I'm confused, and I just consult this inner guidance we have. We have this wealth of knowledge within us. And it sort of just all makes sense without really making sense, without really putting it into words. So that's what these sessions are for. And I would consider this a success if I'll actually highlight a little bit about why this came into being, why I decided to even talk about the sutras. So last week, my father and I were having a discussion on why is there suddenly this rampant of like mental illnesses. Like what I actually asked him that, do you see any reason as to why there's been an increase in the number of mental health or mental illnesses, and what could be the root cause of this? To which he replied, just a simple answer, lack of faith. And this really struck a chord within me. Two reasons why. I come from a very religious family, so when he said lack of faith, I took it synonymous to praying to God, which I don't know, I don't really do that often. So I was like, how does that help, you know? And he said, when you go in front of the Lord, it's actually just your form of catharsis. It's the faith in something larger than you, a trust in a higher power. And I think what he was trying to say is what a 16th century Spanish mystic named Saint Teresa had articulately like expressed, that prayer is actually an intimate friendship, a frequent conversation held alone with the beloved. I'm going to repeat that. A prayer is an intimate friendship, a frequent conversation held alone with the beloved. And I feel that in essence is what yoga is to me. It is just this conversation with my inner child, with my inner being. I like to believe that I have that spark of divinity within me. So just that inner God, you know, and what reinforced this is that when I was reading about what is yoga, I stumbled upon that yoga is a darshanam. We call it yoga darshanam. And darshanam is a mirror or a vision of the soul. So the effect of yoga is to reflect the thoughts and actions of the aspirant as in a mirror. So the practitioner observes the reflections of his thoughts, his mind, his consciousness, his actions, and corrects himself. So this process is what guides him towards the observation of the inner self, or you can call it the inner child. And this was the definition given by B.K.S. Iyengar. But I felt that this is this is in essence what yoga is. It's actually just putting up that mirror, and any religious practice for that matter, or any spiritual practice for that matter. Why do we call it self-reflection, or why do we call it a mirror, a cleansing? Is because we're actually looking at ourselves with all honesty and trying to fix those parts of ourselves, or accept those parts of ourselves that are not acceptable to us, or that we've hidden away for too long. So that's a little bit about why I got into doing this and this offering. And a little note is, think of the sutras as, someone asked me what is sutra. Someone who's not at all introduced to yoga doesn't know, and I think maybe some of y'all would have that question as well. Though I have mentioned it in detail in the PDF, I think for me personally, it is, just think of it as poetry. Let it rain over you. A lot of our traditional knowledge was passed down in the Gurukul system through orally. There was not really much of like note taking, and that's why even the sutras came into being as a way to make it easier to remember, so it's just short and concise and condensed, but super potent, because it's got so much condensed into just one sutra. It can reveal so much. So just let it rain over you. If you do feel like taking notes, please feel free to do that. And the different books that we will be referring to in today's class, or that I'm referring to in general, I'm referring actually to this one, the Yoga. I will send y'all a picture of it as well. It's by Edwin Bryant. Sorry.
Kylie is waiting to get in. She's not.
Ooh,
So will you allow her?
Okay, 1 second. Sorry for that. Is she here? I admitted her. Shailu, are you here? Yes. Okay. Hi. Okay, so we've got into the discussion. I'm just going to continue. So the book that I'm referring to today, or actually for these sessions, is the 3 books. I'm going to show you the one that I stumbled upon, especially during this quarantine actually. So this is the one I stumbled upon. It's by Edwin Bryant. The foreword is written by Iyengar. But I'm going to put into the chat, I stumbled upon a discussion that he was giving about the relation between the Gita and the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and I found it really interesting, and then I stumbled upon the book. So I ordered it on Amazon, and I really enjoy this. However, for more traditional practitioners, you could also choose either of these. So I'm constantly quoting from these 3 books, whether in the PDF, whether in the session, or this one is by Iyengar. It's the Light on the Yoga Sutras. This is actually my mom's copy, and it's got her notes. And this is my dad's copy from his diploma time, obviously blessed by my puppy. So he's just got little nibbles. But yeah, you can basically see whichever one calls out to you, and pick and choose whichever one that works for you. Again, I think more than the theory, I'm going to constantly try to draw the parallel between the theory and the experience of it, because for me primarily yoga is more experiential. So I may give you all of this meaning of yoga and the goal of yoga, but it's of no use if you can't resonate with it, or if there's no experience of it. So I definitely feel that let it just seep in. So we'll start with what is yoga, and like most of y'all mentioned, it is more than physical. It is more mental also. And also Patanjali, though we now ascribe a lot of yoga to just asana, I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, because I think somewhere there can be a start, so that could be the start into the subject, but just don't limit your idea of yoga to just that. In fact, Patanjali's yoga is also Ashta Anga, 8 ang, limbs, so 8 parts, asana just being the third of that limb. So we want to focus on the other limbs as well, which I will get into. In fact, even in the pre-Patanjali period, very little emphasis is actually given on this limb, which is now so widely associated with yoga, which is asana. The Mahabharata, which was before the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, has some 900 odd references of yoga, only 2 of them actually mention asana. Neither the Upanishads nor the Gita mentions postures in the sense of asanas or physical or stretching exercises. They rather refer to it as a seating pose or a seated the physical seat rather than a bodily pose. Someone's audio is on. Can everyone put their cells on mute? Okay. Actually, I can't seem to. Okay. Yeah. So where was I? Yeah. So we have 1 second. Yeah, the Upanishads also, sorry, I was at, then even in the Maitri Upanishad, they have 6 limbs. It doesn't believe that it has 8 limbs, of which none of them mention asana. So while we do put emphasis on it, because it is a part of Patanjali's 8-fold path or 8-limbed yoga, it's not the beginning and end of yoga. So there are some books that do highlight it. So the Hatha Pradipika, those of y'all that have been in Kaivalya Dham or have studied, like this was the diploma book that we got from, in the diploma study, you would have got this book. And they also got the Hatha Pradipika, which is a 14th century book. They have, out of 4 chapters, they do discuss one entire chapter on asana. So there might be a lot of emphasis also on asana, but what I'm saying is that it's not, don't limit your definition of yoga to just asana. So I like what Edwin has to say about the Yoga Sutra. He says Patanjali reads more like a manual for the practitioner interested in plumbing the depths of the human consciousness rather than a philosophical exposition. So yoga claims to provide a system by which the practitioner can directly realize his or herself, the soul, the innermost conscious self, through mental practices. Yeah, so that's its importance, is that it's through mental practices. Now, who is Patanjali? Yeah, who is, so this, I've written a little story in the slide. I'm just going to go over it in brief. Maybe I'll keep slide share so y'all can see it. So we did this. So yeah. So Sage Patanjali, how did he come into being? How come the Yoga Sutras? Is he the founder of yoga? No, he's not the founder of yoga. He systematized yoga, but he didn't find it. Actually, I think the origination is given to who originated yoga is actually Hiranyagarbha. But we won't get into that because he still does play. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are still a very canonical text while studying yoga. So it is very, very important and it's an integral part of it. But he just systematized yoga, and we'll see why we say that, because even his first sutra reveals that yoga was existing before him. And I just mentioned to you all about how the Mahabharata, the Gita, the Upanishads all have a mention of yoga. So this was the pre-Patanjalian period. So there has to be, the study was already there. This science was already there. He just systematized it. And Ved Vyas ji wrote the first commentary, of which all other commentators have picked up on. So back to rewind a bit, who is Sage Patanjali? So Patanjali is known to be Swayambhu. So he is to have incarnated or born himself. And how did this come into being is that Adi Shesh, which is the god of serpents, the vehicle for, or the bed for Lord Vishnu, one day while Shiva was performing his dance, happened to, could not take the weight of Vishnu. And the reason was that Vishnu was so, Lord Vishnu was so mesmerized by the dance that he was vibrating with the same frequency and energy as Shiva. And that created so much pressure that the Adi Shesh couldn't hold, was gasping for air and couldn't hold his Lord up. Luckily, when he was just going to go out of breath is when Shiva stopped his dance and Vishnu stopped vibrating at that level. And when this settled, Adi Shesh asked Vishnu that, what was that? How come, what happened? And he's like, this is what happens when Shiva is dancing. He has such a potency. And he's like, I want to learn. I want to know about this. Will he teach me? And much later on, in his yogic practices, does he see that he will be born to a mother called Gonika, a yogini named Gonika, who was wishing for a child. She was praying to the god that as the end of her life, she was appearing the end of her life and asking for a child to pass on her knowledge to. And while she was praying, she was offering jal to the god, water to the sun god. And while offering that, her prayers were answered. And when she looked into her palms, a small serpent that later on took the form of a being came into her hands. And that's why Pat, fallen, Anjali, into open arms. That's why the name comes into being, Patanjali. And that's why you also have a lot of traditional texts will have a serpent or multiple, Adi Shesha, multiple head serpent on Patanjali, because he's to have incarnated from that. So, sorry, I'm going to stop slide share. So that's a little bit about Sage Patanjali. And like I mentioned, he is not the founder. He systematized it. It's approximated, like there's an approximate that he did this around 1st to 2nd century CE. We can't say with exactitude because we don't have the details of that. But we definitely know it's pre-5th century, because that's when Ved Vyasji give the primary commentary on this. So it has to be any time before the 5th century. And as I was mentioning, the first sutra itself, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Anu indicates the continuation of the action denoted by the word. So this means that it's a continuation of these teachings of yoga. And but nonetheless, to all intents and purposes, his Yoga Sutra was to become a canon for the mechanics of generic yoga. So we do obviously every class, in fact traditional classes, the chant that we heard in the beginning of today's class, that's the chant that most traditional classes will even play to pay their homage, respect to Sage Patanjali. So whatever, I think it's interesting because a lot of people say that they want to learn Sanskrit to actually read the sutras in their original form. And while this may be lovely and that might be a great initiative, I feel that what's interesting to note is that all the other commentaries that we get, any of these, or all of these in fact, and so many more, are actually explorations. No one actually critiques the original commentary of Ved Vyasji. They are actually just explorations or deeper understanding of what Ved Vyasji has written. So they all actually just come from the same Vyasabhyas. So no one really critiques this. They just expand or elaborate on this. And who is Ved Vyasji? Ved Vyasji, he's also known as Ved Vyas or Vyasa. He's Ved Vyas because he was the one who divided the Vedas into 4 parts. He's the one who's recorder of the Mahabharata, compiler of the Puranas, which basically the primary literary figure of ancient India. Yeah, so that's why there have been a lot of other commentators after Ved Vyasji. So we had Shankara, who is very influential in the Vedanta school of thought. We had Vivarana. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but if you do read any of these texts, they will if you read any of these texts, they will actually quote, they might say that Shankara wrote this or Vachaspati Mishra wrote this, and these are just other commentators. So that's what, but they've all elaborated. What you want to know is that they've all elaborated on Vyasa Bhyasa, which is Ved Vyasji's commentary. I don't have time actually, but otherwise maybe I will also share a little bit about why there's not much. There was this Arabic translation of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra done by Al-Biruni, and when they checked, it happened to lead to the same understanding. So even though someone else is reading the same sutra and Ved Vyasji is reading same Patanjali Sutra, they both led to the same understanding. So there's very little scope for misunderstanding, and which is why I think it might be unnecessary or not really required to personally learn Sanskrit and then read the primary text, because Ved Vyasji and other people have already provided the foundation, which is very simplistic in the sense you can understand. There's only one way to make meaning of that sutra. so this is based, we're going to dive into Sankhya. So before I dive into Sankhya and what is Sankhya, so there's an orthodox Hindu thought and heterodox Hindu thought, or heterodox schools. What are these schools of Indian philosophy? So the orthodox ones are the Astika, and they actually hold the Vedas as very important, as the oldest preserved literature in India, the Vedas, as very important. And they also agree more or less in their belief system. So you have Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta, which are all orthodox, and they believe, or Astika, and they believe in the authority of the Vedas. On the contrary, you have the Nastika, which are Buddhism, Charvak, Jainism, which don't believe or accept the authority of the Vedas. I'm not going to dive deeper into this, what are the Vedas, all of that. I'm not diving into that. The only reason of this mention is so that we understand why the metaphysics, which is the next part that we're getting into, of yoga and Sankhya, how do they contribute to our understanding of yoga. So I'm going to refer to the slide. So you could think of it that yoga and Sankhya, they are not the same, but they do have a similar understanding of the universe. And what I mean when I say that is, think of it that Sankhya believes that there's a Purusha and Prakriti, these two ontological categories, distinct, which constantly keep evolving to give you new evolutes of it. And that's how we have all manifested matter. Right? And and yoga picks up on this same philosophy. Now when we say what are they getting at, or what is this, so some may call it Purusha, some may call it Atman, some may call it soul. I remember growing up, I found all of this just garb. I was like, what is the soul, none of this made sense. Yeah, so if you're one of those, that's totally okay. You can continue to believe whatever that may be for you, whatever, as we started off with, what does yoga mean to you, make it personal. Yeah, don't look at this, I'm not here to just give you this theory or the metaphysics and lay it out that okay, this is Sankhya, this is yoga. Try to make it yours, incorporate it in your life, note those experiences you have had, and see where does that come from, where does that stem from, whether that's a sense of inner voice. I've often called that seat of intuition as an inner voice. I often refer to that as my inner voice or my inner child, what Sankhya would call probably Purusha, or what Vedanta school may call it Atman or Brahman. So these are just different names, but what they're saying is that these schools of thoughts, they kind of coexisted to give, and people kind of borrowed the same terms. So Sankhya again is to have existed before the sutras, before the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So it's a belief that they borrowed this from the Sankhya tradition. So we have this understanding of the universe, which is the diagram, this diagram, yeah. And if you see, you have Purusha, which is the pure consciousness, and Prakriti. And Prakriti gives forms to all these other tattvas. Okay, so thatness, those specific ingredients. What I'm gonna call this, or I'm gonna make this, you can think of this analogous to the churning of milk. Yeah, so just think of it that gross matter is actually an evolute of or a derivative of something subtler, the subtle elements of something subtler still, which is again, so it's constantly just one leading to another. Where is all of these evolutes coming from? It's nothing but a play of the gunas. Okay, so these plays, or the gunas, are think of them as three strands of the same rope, adding flavor to all our experiences. So 1 second. Sorry. So we just read through this together, just so we have a broad understanding. We don't need to dive deep into this. So there are three gunas. there are two categories, Purusha and Prakriti, and then there are three gunas. There's Sattvic, Tamasic, Rajasic. A lot of y'all may have already heard this. And actually, yoga believes that all mental activity also, because we believe yoga to be more mental, is actually a coloration of these. We all have, at any time, multiple times in the day, sometimes we're feeling a little more active, sometimes we're feeling more rested. It's actually nothing but just a play of these gunas, just a play, different proportion of this. You could also think of these as the primary colors and how they give the red, blue and yellow. Sorry, I'm confused with the primary colors, but red, blue and yellow, I think. They give rise to so many different colors. So just these three gunas give rise to so many different experiences, so many different mental states. Red, yellow, blue. That being said, let's just go through this. So according to the specific proportion or mixes of the gunas, living beings exhibit different types of mindset. When sattva is predominant in an individual, the qualities of lucidity, tranquility, wisdom, discrimination, peacefulness, happiness, and detachment manifest. When rajat is predominant, hankering, attachment, energetic endeavor, passion, power, restlessness, creative activity manifest. When tamas is predominant, stillness, delusion, disinterest, ignorance, lethargy, and sleep manifest. Analogous to three primary colors, different hues being simply expressions of the specific proportionality of red, yellow, and blue, and so are the gunas continually interacting, giving rise to different states of mind. Why is sattva? So it's not like rajasic is bad, it's not like tamasic is bad. What we're stating is that they all give rise to the next creation, right? So they all give rise to another creation. So out of Prakriti, you have, when it's churned, you get Buddhi. Buddhi is considered more sattva in nature. Why is it sattva? We just mentioned earlier that sattva gives you the quality of discrimination. So it is this Buddhi or Mahat that gives you that ability to understand, that see the difference between Purusha and Prakriti. Otherwise, we're just colored by the ahamkar, the ego, which is more of a rajas quality. It has more rajas. We're constantly thinking everything that's happening is happening to me. This body, everything's just happening to me. Not that observer, not that seer, not that drashta, as Patanjali calls it in his third sutra, the Purusha. They think that it's happening to us. So these are just evolutes of it. I'm not, again, going to get too much into it. The primary focus being that there's a Purusha and a Prakriti. The Purusha, the unchanging matter. The Prakriti, the constantly changing matter. It's constantly changing because of the gunas. And think of it like the milk. From milk, we can get butter, yogurt, ghee, and then we can further get ice cream and everything else. So think of it like that. Think of it that the churning of the gunas is giving you all these different tattvas, so as to say. And these tattvas is what is tattva literally translates to thatness. So they are the real constitute of that world out there perceived by yourself. So what is the correlation between, now moving out of Sankhya, but to just leave you with this, what was the correlation of Sankhya and Yoga? Yoga being a earnest striving or a discipline activity, you can get salvation or understand this Purusha through meditation. Whereas for Sankhya, you would understand this Purusha through knowledge, through intellectual or rationalistic means. So that is what the distinction is between the two. I have mentioned that Kapila is the founder, and there are his own sutras as well. Someone who's interested in the metaphysics of Sankhya could dive deeper with that. So I'm going to stop. And then we can move on to the first sutras. So today I'm going to go into just 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3. If at all from next class y'all have suggestions, or y'all have heard a term that y'all want to understand further, we can do that. But for today's class, I've kept these because this lays the foundation of what is yoga, and any yoga student, this is the basics of it. So let's start with, so just to broaden it, 1.1 states that now the study will begin of yoga, the systematic study, and it can literally be taken to mean that the disciplines of integration are here expounded through experience and are given to humanity for exploration, yeah, and recognition of that hidden part of man which is beyond the awareness of the senses. This is by Iyengar. It's quoted by Iyengar from the Light on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. But what's interesting to note is that there's constantly this meaning of hidden, or this undertone of it's not, this Purusha is not available to us. And why is it not available to us? And why do we have to extricate him from the depths of our knowing? And that is the process of yoga, because it's not so easily accessible to us. We can't just sit here, meditate for 1 hour, stay in stillness and understand what Purusha is. There's a lot of work that's required, sometimes over a life, a lot of striving. And that's why yoga is known as a discipline, a ardent striving of achieving that, of understanding that that hidden part of man which is beyond our awareness of the senses. Because all of our experience today that we understand is through our senses. It's through if you look at the slide, it says the further evolutes are the senses, right? The cognitive sense, the karmendriyas, the gyanendriyas. The way we understand the world is through our sense of smell, touch, sight. But it's beyond that. You can't perceive the Purusha through those. And that's been all our way of knowing and experiencing and understanding the world. So we have to go beyond this way of experience. And that's why it takes cultivation, and it requires a striving and a discipline. And that's why Patanjali has laid out that path. How do you reach that undisturbed path? How can you see the Purusha for what it is? Not this Prakriti which is all mixed up in so much, but we want to see and notice and understand this innermost part of ourselves. How do we understand that? How do we bring that out? Is through the Ashtanga, through the 8 limbs, by practicing the 8 limbs again and again and again. And sometimes we often look at only asana, but asana, the pranayama, prepares you for dhyan, which is the most important part. So these all are just preparatory works, yama, niyama. We can get into that in one of the other slides. I won't have time or to do justice to them, but they are basically the moral and ethical codes of conduct. You have the posture, you have the breath work to allow you to do meditation, and then that union, samadhi, yog, yajur, coming together of all our being to actually understand this Purusha. So we can go now into what he means by the Yoga Sutra, the first sutra, Atha Yoga Anushasana. So we already spoke about yoga meaning yajur. We also spoke about samadhi and yoga, the coming together. And it's interesting to note that Vyasa mentions that there are 5 states of our mind at any point in the day. If I catch you and be like, what if you were to inquire into the state of your mind, it would fall into one of these. Yeah. It's interesting to note that we would only consider yoga happening, or if you're a student of yoga, if you have ekagra or niruddha chitta, which is that state of mind which is a one pointed focus or fully absorbed or restrained. If you're partially focused, you're not actually doing yoga. So that's why to actually do yoga, you have to really cultivate that over time. So the mind does go between these states. At times you may be fully focused or fully absorbed. At times you'll go back into your scattered mind, into your planning, into your thinking. At times you'll go back into your sleepy state. So you will keep going between these states. Yeah. And then what happens once what yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. So out here he says that what is yoga? Yoga is the restraint of these modifications of the mind stuff. Why have he called it mind stuff is yoga? Because when I say mind, or they've actually translated chitta to be mind, it's a lot more than just the mind that we know. So if we go up 2 slides here, chitta is manas plus buddhi plus ahankar. So if we go back to this diagram, buddhi, as I mentioned, was the sattvic element which has come. So it's the cosmic intelligence. It's we want to dwell here more because it's from that seat of intuition we are able to get discriminatory power. We are able to see things for what they are, not so closely identify with us. However, we often identify with the ahankar, which is the I amness. Your thoughts, your speech, your action, everything, I am. That it's this is the more rajasic part of us. So the chitta comprises of the ahankar, the buddhi, and the mind. The mind I'm just going to loosely translate into all the emotional stuff, all the samskar, all the past impressions, memories you've had, all of that stored. So when I say chitta, and if I translate it into mind, the mind out here means the emotional mind, the identity or ego creating mind, and the cosmic mind. You are referring to all three of them, right? So when he says yogas chitta vritti nirodha, he actually means that we want to create, yoga is when our chitta is in this nirodha state, fully absorbed or restrained. That is what is yoga. And if I were to give you an example of what does that mean, think of it like when you throw a pebble into a pond and you see ripples that are created. And because of those ripples created, you can't see the seabed. You can't clearly see the seabed. Neither can you see the reflection of those mountains into the water. It's all scattered. It's all fragmented. And that's why we have a distorted view of reality. We don't know what's really there because of this disturbance. However, when those ripples still, and when it comes to a complete calm state, we're able to see the seabed for what it is, and we're able to see a clear reflection of the mountain. This is when we're able to actually recognize Purusha, that state which is unchanging within us, that eternal self within us, for what it is. So that's the first sutra. Second sutra. That's what it means. That yoga is the nirodhaing, the restraining, the stopping. This again, please note, this is not a forceful stop. You can't just be like, okay, I'm just going to chitta vritti nirodha and just keep focusing. I'm going to nirodha. It's not going to happen like that. It's a cultivation. It's peaceful striving. You have to keep cultivating the art. It's not that one time you sit and you're just going to be like, I'm just going to nirodh all those mental disturbances or mental afflictions. So it happens. It's a slowing down of the mental activity, and this happens naturally and gradually. Yeah, and then it'll come to a complete cessation. I am running out of time. Okay, and then we'll move to tada, the last sutra, tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. So tada, at that time, the drashta, the seer soul, and like I mentioned earlier, Patanjali out here introduces this drashta as Purusha. That's why I introduced Sankhya to you, because he's not calling it Purusha, but the drashta, the seer, the observer. In a lot of experience, if you had yourself, you would have noticed that there's something out there that can suddenly just detach from the situation and be like, this is happening to you, but I'm undisturbed. This is happening. I understand the situation is happening, the gravity of the situation, but somewhere this part of you is undisturbed. That observer part of you, that undisturbed part of you, that part of you is the drashta, the seer. So it is when these mental afflictions have stopped, when the water has come to a complete standstill, can we really see ourselves for who we are, swarupe, in our own state. We can dwell in our own state. And I'm not going to get into 1.4 because that involves the kleshas. But so this is what happens when we reach. This is the goal of yoga. When we reach the goal of yoga, we are able to notice ourselves for who we are. Another analogy, for those who want, I'm someone who actually understands really well with metaphors or pictures. So another thing, think of it like a red cloth put in front of put behind a crystal, a clear quartz crystal. Now you may think that the crystal is red, and you'll be like, oh, the crystal, it's a red color crystal, but it's not. It's a pristine white color crystal. It's reflecting whatever it is coming in contact with, but we are misidentifying that crystal to be red in color because we see that and we're like, oh, this is what it is. So it is exactly that. The Purusha is the pristine crystal. The red cloth is the Prakriti, which is constantly changing and can keep taking on red, blue, green, different forms and different colors, and we will keep misidentifying with that. So the purpose of yoga is to see that part of that undisturbed self, and also kind of dwell more in the mahat or buddhi rather than the ahankar being the ego self, the I amness. We want to constantly let go, and that this ties up my session as to what I began with, that when my father said that a religious practice, lack of faith. It's that lack of faith of that higher being, that cosmic intelligence. We don't allow it to run through us. We don't allow it to ride us, to govern our decisions. We are so we're so involved, we think that we know best and we can do this, and there's so much of the mental chatter that we don't really allow it to happen in its own natural force, in its own natural way. So that's all. Y'all can all unmute yourself.